My name is Crystal Gregory, and I am an assistant professor in the School of Art and Visual Studies within the College of Fine Arts. And I use she, her pronouns, and that's my relationship to UK, I guess, as I teach there. I've been there for 3 years, and I guess that I was there. You left a year before me, right, Natalie?
I left, I think 2012.
Okay, so I got there in 17, so 5 years before. And then Claire and I have worked together for a year now, I think.
Yeah.
Even though it feels like longer, just because I love your work. I love both of your works. And I thought of both of you when Jennifer approached me about this, because I think that there's some crossover in your practices. Like, you both use soft sculpture for one, but there's also this kind of underlying humor, and you both use politics in kind of like a sincere way, but with sort of this like upper jab or something that allows people an inlet of like, humor, and to be able to laugh at themselves and then reflect onto like what's going on in the world.
My name is Natalie Baxter. I use she, her pronouns. I am currently in New York City, but only for a couple more weeks. I'm actually about to do a 7-month residency in upstate New York.
Man, Mosaic is 7 months long.
Yeah, they're doing longer ones because of COVID. So we'll get our own 4-bedroom house and my own studio.
Wow.
Whereas right now I am talking to you from an apartment that's like being packed up. So it's like a mess and it's crazy. But New York City for now. I'm in Queens. Yeah. Oh, I went to UK for my Master of Fine Arts and I graduated in 2012. So, and from there I moved to New York. And then it's my daughter Petra, who's unfortunately going to be around. She's kind of tired, and I'm originally from Lexington, Kentucky.
I'm Claire. My pronouns are she, her. I'm from Lexington. I'm in Lexington right now. And that's the main reason I went to UK. But I'm a current BFA student there. I just started in the BFA program at the beginning of the semester.
Nice.
Yeah, I've been going to UK. This is my junior year, so this is like my 5th semester at UK.
Yeah, congratulations on getting into the BFA program.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So I was hoping that next both of you could talk a little bit about your practice and maybe talk us through your processes, what kind of projects are you attracted to, and maybe where you draw your inspiration from.
So I work mostly with fabric and soft sculpture, but not exclusively. I've actually been playing around with some clay recently and been doing some like paper mache things. Since moving to New York, actually, I've worked mostly in fabric, but at UK, I didn't do any kind of fabric work at all. I use a lot of quilting and fabric and like sewing skills that I learned from my grandmother, who's from Kentucky, actually from Eastern Kentucky. A lot of my work like pulls from this like predominantly feminine craft of sewing that's been passed down from generations in my family through like the maternal side. Yeah, I pulled from a lot of things that are happening in like the political and kind of social. Sorry guys. Petra, this is our first like Zoom appearance, so kind of new to this. I listen to a lot of radio and news and consume a lot of news, and that plays into my work a lot. Like I did a series of guns that Crystal saw. Crystal and I were both in this art fair in New York right before.
Literally like 3 days before the world shut down.
At UK, I did a lot of video and kind of digital things that don't, like the material doesn't directly relate to what I do now, but and even the like way that I approached the work at UK was very different. It wasn't using any kind of humor, but I see like a lot of direct links to what I did at UK and what I do now, even though like from the outside perspective or outside view, you wouldn't. So I did a lot of like video and documentary work, documenting women in Eastern Kentucky through these video portraits, these kind of vignettes of their relationship to home and place. that definitely like is in my work a lot. And I see that a lot with like quilting and like how I make the work, but yet it is like colorful, bright, really handmade versus digital, like opposite in every way, except there is a link that I see. I don't know.
Can I ask, like, do you think that there was something about that shift from Kentucky and in particularly your kind of familial connections to Eastern Kentucky, and then that shift to moving to New York City, and maybe things became a little bit more broad? Or, because I can imagine, I mean, I haven't seen the documentary work, but I can imagine them being, you explain them as portraiture, I can imagine them being really intimate and kind of personable. And then the stuffed sculptures, like the guns and the flags, they seem much more like, they seem more broad, like many people can access those, whereas like maybe the others is more connected to, Kentucky.
Definitely.
In the region.
I think it's like the act of removing yourself from the place where you're from and the place where you create your, like at that time I was creating work about. I think that also changed my work because of location, but because of also just the people you're surrounding yourself with, the like perspective that you have from a place when you're not there, kind of like how home becomes like a different thing in your mind than when you're actually there.
Was New York your first time leaving Kentucky?
I went to undergrad in Tennessee, and then it's the University of the South. It's in Swanee, Tennessee. And then I moved to Montana for 2 years. Lexington was the biggest city I'd lived in until I lived in New York.
Wow.
After UK, I lived in this small town called Whitesburg, which is actually where my grandmother's from, and worked at this place called Apple Shop. I don't know if you've heard of Apple Shop. And now here I am about to move to a very tiny hamlet of Wassaic for 7 months. So that's like another opposite of New York City.
Claire, do you want to tell us a bit about your work and your process so far?
Yeah, so right now, really, I would say more than my work being about the material I use, it's more like for me about the content, because I make work that explores camp, like the aesthetic sensibility of camp. What does it look like? What does it feel like? How can I express it? And like, because I feel like the academic discussion of what camp is has been so focused in like the 20th century, I feel like I look at a lot of 21st century more contemporary examples of camp and how we engage with it as like people now who have social media and have the internet and consume media in a really different way than we used to. But I work with fiber and I work with painting. I feel like right now mainly I'm a painter, but I've also done soft sculpture, and right now I've been making rugs. That's like a new fiber venture for me recently.
Are you doing like rug tufting guns?
Yes, well, I'm doing it by hand because I don't have a tufting gun.
We have a tufting gun in the fiber studio.
I know.
I'll hook you up with that. It's so much fun. It's just sitting there.
It looks really fun.
I know, it's so fun.
So you've been doing like what is it called?
Like a punch needle.
Yeah, punch needle.
Yeah, I think it's so fun. It's like, because I like to do like figurative work the most, and so like being able to use fiber in like a really almost like illustration way has been like really fun for me.
I got to see your paintings. I stopped by the studio like a week ago, and I saw your paintings out in the hallway. And Natalie, just to like tell you about them, there are a couple, at least two, I want to say, with the scene of Britney Spears shaving her head.
Oh, cool.
And then there's at least one of Paris Hilton. And I love what you said, Claire, about not having 21st century examples of camp. And I wonder if that is because like, and this is just an idea, I could be totally wrong, but maybe we're like too close to it to identify it as camp yet. Things in the 70s and 80s and 90s, it's like easier to point your finger at and be like, oh, that's camp, you know? But when it's so close to us, it's like, it's almost more controversial, or I don't know what the right word would be, but it seems harder to name it. Claire, why are you attracted to camp?
A lot of things that are classically camp are like the things that I feel like when I was growing up and like using the internet for the first time, but now I'm talking like 2011. So like that was when my very free reign internet days were. When you all were adults, but I was 11 in 2011.
Right.
And I feel like I was doing a lot of things on the internet I probably shouldn't have been. And I was like 11 and I was like watching John Waters movies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think that influenced me in like a really deep way. And now like camp, the way it's ridiculous and over the top, but still so celebratory of these things, that's what I love about it. And I also feel like as a lesbian, I really feel like camp is like sort of, a lot of ways, like camp history is like a history of gay culture in a lot of ways. And I feel like almost when exploring camp, I am in some way paying homage to like a cultural history that I sort of have. And I like to, you know, explore gay culture in that way, both present and past.
Right. Like what, like queer histories that are maybe more aesthetic based.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think a lot of things that are like considered gay culture, even now, are things that are not necessarily always considered gay culture. Like there's so many things that, especially when it comes to camp, things that are loved in a camp way but aren't always, and they're not like created for that purpose.
Right.
But there's a lot of people who are fans of them for
Right.
those reasons.
Yeah, and that's almost where it becomes camp, is like in the fandom. The other thing that I love about the content of your work is it's like those three characters, Britney Spears, Paris Hilton, and Nicole Smith, they're complicated.
Yes.
They're so complicated because they're not only people that have lives and stories, but they have they're cultural icons, and we as the voyeurs, as the viewers, make them into something else. You know, like we consume them, and they thrive and fail at the same time because of that consumption. You know, and I think that kind of plays both back into feminist histories, but also queer histories and queer theory in particular. So yeah, I think that they're so symbolic in a lot of ways, but and we all know them, and we like laugh at, with, feel for, I don't know, like they're just complicated people.
Yeah, totally. And I do feel like a lot of, especially female celebrities who become gay icons are also, camp icons are definitely like tragic figures. And I think that people who love camp and engage with it, like that tragedy resonates with people. And like, to quote John Waters, like he said, camp is something that's tragically ludicrous or ludicrously tragic. I think that intersection of things that are like crazy and ridiculous or even funny with things that are like really actually tragic and sad is where like a lot of camp lives. And I think Britney Spears and Anna Nicole Smith and Paris Hilton also live in that intersection of things.
I'm sure you saw the Met show or heard about the show at the Met, the camp show a couple years ago.
Which I think that was really interesting because I feel like when that happened, I mean, everybody, when the Met Gala happens, is like super hypercritical of what everybody's wearing, obviously. But when that happened, it was interesting because there was a lot of people who just obviously didn't understand what camp was, and there was no effort to figure it out because, you know, it was just like, there's very few people at the Met Gala. Even people who had like really interesting outfits weren't necessarily being camp, and that's up for debate. Like I feel like it's a nebulous word. Like a lot
of discussion around that exhibit was like, well, what is camp, and who can define camp, and what like what does it mean? What does it look like?
I mean, I love that the word itself, it's never been distilled. I mean, it's been around for what, 70 years or now. That the first like notes on camp came out in the 50s, right?
Like 64 or something.
So I wanted to ask also why you guys chose University of Kentucky.
For me, I was living out in Montana at the time, and I asked some advice from my college professors, and they were like, don't go into debt to get your MFA because you will likely not make a lot of money afterwards. And I thought that was very, very good advice. I was looking for programs that were were funded or going to give money or would do some kind of TA and I liked the appeal of coming back to Kentucky. My sister was also applying to law schools at the time. So we were like, oh, it'd be pretty fun if we both went to graduate school and law school in the same city and we could live together. So I got to live with my sister while she was in law school. I liked that it was a pretty open program. You kind of chose what your medium was, but you didn't really have to going in. It was a little more interdisciplinary. And then I liked the size. I liked that there were not that many MFA students. So then that really granted a lot of room to like reach out to different professors who were not necessarily in your medium and get feedback from like the painting professor on video for doing video work, or this is her new little shimmy. She does like a little shoulder shimmy.
It's a good dance.
It was like a comfortable place for me to be going to graduate school because I did know the city already and I knew it wasn't like a big city that you were going to get distracted from studio work. Like if you go to school in New York, there's a million art things to do all the time, which is wonderful, but I can imagine that would be a little bit difficult to get work done, or maybe not. I don't know.
So I came to UK because I was from Lexington, and when I was in high school, I applied to a lot of schools that were outside of Lexington.
Where were your other schools?
My number one school I wanted to go to was SAIC, which I know you went there, Crystal, and I still want to go there, maybe for grad school, I don't know. I ended up not wanting to go there because I was gonna have to pay a ton of money, and I was like, I don't think that's worth it for my undergrad to pay a ton of money. And so I ended up going to UK, but I was actually really surprised by how much I actually love the program, especially the BFA program. I feel like is really rigorous, and there's so many great students, I feel like, coming out of the BFA at UK.
I so agree. I mean, I've taught now at 2 schools and went to graduate school at SAIC, and I think by far this is the best BFA program. Like it's just so there's so much offered to the students.
After moving to New York, we got into the art scene here, and there's the one thing that I did feel like was interesting about going to UK is like I was the only person that I hung out with in New York that went to UK. It was like I was a little bit of a lone wolf because coming from Kentucky, which I think was you had to kind of like I had to like kind of like find my people, I guess, whereas sometimes if you come to New York from a big program, then your people are already found for you. I think that also kind of worked to my advantage a little bit. But a lot of my friends that did go to those schools were like, had to get a certain job that made a certain amount of money because they had a lot of student loans to pay back. Whereas I was like, I don't have student loans for my MFA. And that's really
important.
Yeah, that was really great. And it's really great for something like when you're an artist, because you're always struggling between time and money, and time is like time doesn't always equal money as an artist, you know, so you need that time to be making work. And if you have a lot of student loan debt from your MFA that you have to pay back, then your time is more limited.
So stemming from that question, Natalie, were there any things that you wish you knew that you know now? Like words of advice that you could bestow upon somebody who's about to, I don't know, follow your path?
I think I took like 2 years off from undergrad and graduate school. In a way, I wish that I had given myself more time before going to graduate school, just to like really know what it was I wanted to do. But also in another way, I see people going to graduate school when they're older and they feel like they're already set into their practice or their work, and they aren't as malleable to, or like not receptive to like trying new things or to changing their practice or their work. Also just like take advantage of trying all of these different mediums while you're still in school, like play around with different things, which I did a little bit of at UK. Like I did a lot of printmaking that I'd never done before. Learning those foundations of how to do things while you're in school, even getting your BFA, will like, you don't know what your practice will evolve to, and you don't know like what skill set you will need in the future. And if you already have those skill sets, then like you're already pulling from that kind of toolbox of things that you know how to do. So now's the time to like play around with that and experiment and play around and learn. This is the time to learn. And don't worry about like don't worry as much right now about making a really, strong, of course you want a strong body of work, but you don't need to, that doesn't quite need to be the goal right now. Like you need to like learn and experiment and play around with all these different things, and that will only make your work stronger. Until New York, I didn't really know that I could just be an artist. Like so after my MFA, I was like, okay, well, I can try to teach and I can try to do this. And then slowly I like figured out a way to where I do just go to the studio and make work, and that's it.
Maybe you can talk a little bit more about this, Natalie, but I'm sure you had lots of different parts in your life that got you to, being able to sustain yourself economically on selling your work. It doesn't actually happen like when you leave a program, as we know.
I think that there's a whole path to doing that doesn't equal like, okay, I got my MFA, now I'm an artist.
Paycheck, right.
Somebody give me some money.
Okay, so thank you both, Natalie Baxter and Claire Thompson, for spending this time with us, and it was super insightful. So thank you from the College of Fine Arts.
Thank you, Crystal, and nice to meet you, Claire, and good luck to you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was nice to see you, Crystal, and it was nice to meet you, Natalie. Thank you.
See you soon, I hope, Claire.
Yeah, hopefully.
Okay. Bye, Petra.